First, we'll tackle the big question: why do we even have brains? Then we'll look at the simple blueprint all brains are built on. From there, we'll journey up from the most basic life support systems to the central hub and finally to the big boss, the part responsible for all your thoughts and personality. And we'll wrap it up with a quick quiz to make sure it all sticks.
Okay, first things first. Why a brain? What's the point? Well, the simplest answer is movement. If you're an animal that needs to move around to find food or avoid becoming food, you need a command center. Something to take in all the information from your senses, make sense of it, and then organize a coordinated response.
And as we go through our tour today, we're going to keep coming back to these two ideas: structure and function. Structure is the what, the physical part itself, its anatomy. Function is the what it does, its job, its physiology. You really can't understand one without the other. They're two sides of the same coin.
Now let's talk about the master plan. The human brain, with all its amazing complexity, didn't just pop into existence. Nope, it evolved from a much, much simpler model. A basic blueprint that we can actually still see in other animals, and even in the early stages of a human embryo.
See, the basic plan is a hindbrain, a midbrain, and a forebrain, all sitting on top of the spinal cord. In something like a shark, that three-part plan is pretty clear. But in us, that forebrain has just exploded in size, folding all over the other parts to become this massive structure for higher thinking. And this gives us our #1 rule of thumb for brain organization. The closer a part is to the spinal cord, the more basic its job is.
So, following that rule, let's start our tour right at the bottom, where the brain plugs into the spinal cord. These are the non-negotiable systems, the parts that are working 24/7, keeping you alive, whether you're awake, asleep, or in a coma. This whole area is called the brainstem, and it's basically three structures stacked like building blocks. At the very bottom, you have the medulla oblongata. On top of that is the pons, and at the very top is the midbrain. So, what's the brainstem's job? Well, it has two absolutely critical roles. First, it's your body's life support system, the ultimate autopilot. It handles your breathing, your heart rate, your digestion, all without you ever having to think about it. And second, it's like Grand Central Station for information. All the data from your senses comes up through here, and all the commands to your muscles go back down through here.
Now, tucked right in behind the brainstem, you've got this amazing structure called the cerebellum. You can thank your cerebellum for every physical skill you've ever learned: playing the guitar, kicking a soccer ball, and yes, riding a bike. It's the master of coordination, and it stores all those motor memories so you can perform complex movements smoothly, automatically, without even thinking.
Okay, moving up from the brainstem, we're now entering the brain's central hub. Think of this as the main sorting facility and regulation center for pretty much all the information flowing through your head.
Sitting right on top of the brainstem, we find the thalamus. And honestly, the best way to think about it is as your brain's main data router, or maybe the central mailroom. It takes in nearly all the sensory information, everything you see, hear, and feel, and directs that traffic to exactly the right spot in the higher brain to be processed.
And right underneath the thalamus is the tiny but incredibly powerful hypothalamus. Its #1 job is maintaining homeostasis, which is just a fancy word for keeping your internal body environment stable and balanced. It's your body's thermostat. It makes sure your temperature is just right, tells you when you're hungry or thirsty, and even manages your sleep-wake cycles.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, we've arrived at the main event, the cerebrum. This is that big, wrinkly, folded part of the brain that you always picture. It is the home of consciousness, of personality, of all your highest-level thoughts. This is where raw data gets turned into a meaningful experience of the world.
And just to give you a sense of scale here, that wrinkly outer layer of the cerebrum, called the cerebral cortex, makes up a whopping 80% of your brain's entire mass. All those folds and grooves, that's nature's brilliant way of cramming more surface area, and therefore more processing power, into your skull. Now, the cerebrum is famously split into a left and a right hemisphere, and they're connected by this massive bundle of nerves called the corpus callosum. It's like a superhighway for information between the two sides. And while they're always working together, they do have their specialties. The left hemisphere tends to handle things like logic and language, while the right is a bit more specialized in things like recognizing faces and spatial awareness.
This cortex is divided into 4 main sections, or lobes. Up front, you've got the frontal lobe. This is the boss, the CEO. It handles planning, decision-making, and emotional control. We know how vital it is from cases like Phineas Gage, the railroad worker whose personality totally changed after an iron rod shot through his frontal lobe. It's where your judgment lives. Then there's the parietal lobe, which processes sensation and helps you react to the world around you. At the very back, the occipital lobe is all about one thing, vision. And on the sides, the temporal lobes are crucial for language, hearing, and forming memories.
Phew, okay, that was a pretty fast tour, I know. We've gone all the way from the basic life support systems up to the wrinkly cortex that makes you who you are. So let's do a little quick-fire review just to see what's stuck. You ready?
First up, imagine you're learning to play the piano. Which part of your brain is working overtime, coordinating your fingers and building that muscle memory so you don't even have to think about it?
Yes, it is the cerebellum. Tucked away at the back, it's your personal master of movement and coordination.
All right, next question. Which one of the 4 big lobes acts as the brain's CEO, the one in charge of making good decisions, planning for the future, and keeping your emotions in check?
And that would be the frontal lobe. Absolutely. It's the part of you that's responsible for your personality and your ability to make good, reasoned judgments.
And that brings us to one last thing to think about. For most of human history, the brain was a complete black box. But now, with incredible tools like fMRI, we can literally watch thoughts form in real time. So the question is, as our technology gets even better, what incredible mysteries about ourselves, about consciousness, will we finally solve when we can map the entire brain's network right down to every last single neuron?